Friends, colleagues and listeners, quick announcement, a live face-to-face conference at long last. 5th to the 7th of September, it's going to be at the Grand Hyatt in Athens, and I'm talking about the Air Cargo Handling Logistics Conference, which also has Air Freight Pharma in association with Cool Chain, AGS, Airline Ground Services, in association with ASA Leadership Forum, and on top of that, we've got ULD Care. Des Fatanis is going to be the chairman, myself and Stan Rafe, co-moderators. Hard talk, direct questions, great panel, great speakers. Please join us, and all details are shown below in the link. Friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are. We've got a special show today. It's not Christmas, it's not my birthday, it's not an anniversary, but it's nonetheless a special day. I've got two old colleagues, and for those of you who are watching, you can see the faces, slightly changed, slightly aged, a little bit more character, but nonetheless, two of my favourites in the industry. And the people I'm talking about is Rupert Batstone. Yeah, and he is living and talking, believe it or not.
Oh, you want me to say something? All right, sorry.
Yeah, as always, Rupert. So
Good
Rupert
morning.
Batstone and David Ambridge.
Good afternoon from Thailand.
Good afternoon, David. And Rupert, your location?
Scotland.
Curling capital of the world, mate.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Gold medals, left, right, and centre. Well, gold and a silver. Yeah.
Fantastic, though. Brilliant. So impressed with what they did. Now, guys, people know you in the industry, okay? And anybody who's watching who might not, and I'm sure there'll be very few, just give me a quick background of what you did and who you worked for. So let's start with you, David.
Well, yeah, it seems like a lifetime ago that I started, and of course it was a lifetime. 1972 was the first time I got in the business with British Airways. It was BEA at the time. Moved on to Seaboard World, Flying Tigers, FedEx, and then moved out into the Middle East in the year 2000. Did a few years in Doha, then to Dubai, and then I went to work for this maniac called Rupert Batstone in Abu Dhabi. And then I got a phone call that would I like to go and look after the Bangkok Flight Services cargo terminal in Bangkok. And I did that for probably just about 11 years, and then decided that I'd had enough, and I retired 5 years ago, and been living in peace and tranquility up here in northeast Thailand, and enjoying life with my girlfriend and my dogs.
Nice one. Right, Rupert, a little bit.
Well, I'm obviously much younger than David. I started in 1980 with Dan Air at Cardiff Airport, moved around with them for 10 years. When they went to British Airways, I moved on to a handling company up in Birmingham for a couple of years, and then back down south, a couple of GSAs around the Heathrow and Gatwick area. And then I went to Etihad out in Abu Dhabi in 2004, was there for 6 years. Then sort of my time was done. I came back in 2010, got a job with Swissport, where I remained until 5 months ago. And I retired from the industry because I'd had enough, just like David. But I'm not living in tranquil Thailand. I'm in Scotland.
Right. Okay. So that's a little bit of history now, and you've both underplayed that history. Now, let me ask you something. Let me ask you something, right? Because I've seen your face there, Rupert. But listen, the two of you are so well known in the cargo community, okay, for your honesty, outspokenness, humor at times, some well-deserved rants and raves at things that are so frustrating and have frustrated people in the industry for God knows how long. But apart from you both being characters, let me ask you now, if you scan back over the history of your careers, who would have been the biggest characters that you both came across in that time, and why?
Characters. I mean, I've got characters who, not sort of leaders of the industry or people you look up to. There was a guy I worked with at Dan Air at Gatwick Airport for about 4 years. I became his supervisor. He was much older than me. But boy, was he a character. A guy called Ken Clark. Used to work for Lufthansa at Heathrow many, many moons ago. Then he went down to Gatwick, worked for Gatwick Handling, and then for Dan Air. And we worked the booking system and the ramp. And he was so passionate. He went overboard. I mean, he upset a few people on a regular basis. So, you know, we were in the same team, that works. But just his passion. I mean, he's a guy. I mean, this tells you about Ken Clark, right? We'd lost a piece of freight in Zurich, Gatwick, Zurich, and Noah could have, the shipper, the consignee was going mental. Obviously, meant a lot to them, obviously. And Ken Clark just asked our boss in London. He said, "Give me a ticket. I'll go and find it." So, and we'd had no feedback at all. "Give me a ticket. I'll go to Zurich. I'll find it." So he got on a plane, went to Zurich, and my God, he found it. He found it in Swiss Air's empty bin park in a ULD. Now, Dan Air was a loose loaded airline. Yeah, it didn't have any ULDs. How the hell he found that? But he wasn't going to give up. He was so tenacious. He was a character. Boy, I mean, he was full on. Tell you, he's the guy that running around to the hold of an aircraft fell over the fueling pipe and cracked his head open. Ambulanced off the pan. Lunatic, but he was a character.
So, I mean, that's a lovely story, Rupert, and it's one that I'm going to come to now, because one of the questions I'm going to ask you both is, you know, the level of engagement and the level of commitment. You know, how have you seen it change? And it's not to open the door to criticize what's happening today or whatever, but things have changed. And equally, I'm aware that, you know, the older you get, the better you were. And so I'm not looking for, I'm not looking to do that. But those sort of people, I wonder if they're there now, you know?
I'm not so sure. I think it's become totally formulaic and controlled by many disciplines that we had to abide by, but not to the level now. I mean, health and safety has created an industry all on its own, which kills some of the spontaneity. So I think it's very difficult to let those characters come through the system that we now operate in.
Yeah, and it is very different times, isn't it? I was telling my daughter the other day, because she was talking about when we lived in the States, and she could remember me coming down to the plane with her, and that was pre-security. You know, that was when you could just go down. You had your pass, you could go down and literally see them onto the plane, and then you go back yourself, get on the train, and go home. You know, so it's amazing how things have changed. But let me pitch the same one to you, Dave.
I guess the one that really stands out for me is Rupert.
Oh, get away.
No, I mean, I'm not just saying that. I mean, Rupert, we worked together for almost 2 years there in Abu Dhabi, and I mean, every day was just great fun.
It was manic in those days, though, Dave.
I mean, we were, you know, Etihad was growing beyond. Nobody had ever seen it before, I don't think. I mean, it was growing so quickly, and it was very pioneering. You know, what we were doing was very pioneering. Opening up a station a week, and sometimes more than one station a week, and we did that for nearly 2 years. And we did it with about 3 or 4 of us, as I seem to remember. Goodness knows how many people they've morphed that into these days to do the work that 3 or 4 of us did back in the day. But they were great times, and I learned a hell of a lot in that 2 years. Really, I did. And it was a great time. I enjoyed my time in Doha. Doha was very similar. When I got into Doha in the year 2000, Gulf Air was the biggest airline, and Qatar Airways had about 3 or 4 flights a day. When I left 4 years later, there was this monster called Qatar Airways, and Gulf Air was running 1 320 a day to Bahrain. So that just shows you how that had morphed into the, you know, the monster that it is today. And we had very, very poor facilities to try and handle that growing volume of traffic, as was the same in Abu Dhabi. We didn't have an Emirates Sky Cargo facility or a custom built cargo terminal. We had a couple of old shacks, and we kind of made it work, you know, and we were able to grow the airline significant amount in that time. So they were good fun times.
It's funny, isn't it, how that all three of us have worked in similar places or the same place, i.e. Abu Dhabi. And Rupert, I've got to say as well, mate, the time that I was there working with you, there was always a laugh every day. And I think that's a very, very, very special talent that somebody's got, you know, no matter how desperate or bad or whatever, there was always a good turn of humor. And that's something that I enjoyed with both of you when we were on COAG and ICHC. I mean, those early days.
I mean, it's great to see Martin back in Etihad Cargo. He was another one of the pioneers when I got there, and when Rupert was there, and he was running the freighters and the charters. And man, the obstacles that man overcame on a daily basis.
He's stunning. To be honest, Martin Drew is stunning. He ran the charter side of Etihad's freighters virtually on his own for a while, and then he had one little helper who was operations. I'm sure this number's right. I mean, all he did, I mean, we had schedule freighters, so he had to fill the gaps. Yeah. So he was restricted in terms of not just having access to any freighter when someone wanted one. He had to fill the gaps. And one year, this is in my mind, I think he made $23 million for Etihad on charters. One bloke. And I remember, Martin's a friend of mine, used to go to his house in Dubai and speak to his wife, Fiona, because at the weekends he was always on the phone. He never took downtime, nothing, just chatting away to Fiona.
Yeah, they were good days.
He is a star, isn't he? Yeah. I mean, I don't want to turn this into the bloody Martin Drew fan club, but he's got everything, isn't he? He's a decent lad, decent fella. He's got a great personality, great company to be out with.
Yep.
He's a good. He could be a model. He could be an underwear model in a different life. All the women love him, including my missus. But he's so popular. It's incredible, isn't it?
Didn't he work with you in Lufthansa many moons ago? Yeah,
he did. I've got some good stories of him when he was there, and one in particular when he resigned when I was on vacation. I was as mad as hell, and then had to pitch to get him back. But he came back to Lufthansa, and he was always destined for bigger and better things. But he was he still is a cracking lad, and I think Etihad are very, very, very lucky to have him.
Very.
The other thing you mentioned, Chris, was COAG. How COAG got started off, and that was another great couple of years that we had with COAG, and then into ICHC, where we really came together as ground handlers and airlines, and kind of I think helped to show the industry how people could actually cooperate as partners. Yeah. Rather than being a kind of a master servant relationship, and I think we did some groundbreaking stuff in COAG, and we had some great people on COAG back in the day: Henrik Ambach and Bala, Alan Wright, Chris, Rupert, me, Yussi from Finnair at the time, now Cargo Lux. I mean, we really had a band of brothers there that whenever anybody gave us an issue to look at, we just dealt with it. We didn't flaff about, and we didn't create obstacles. We broke down barriers.
I think it was the culture of that group. I mean, sorry, David. It was the culture of that group. I joined it when you two guys were already in. And there were some ground rules that have been put into that IATA work group, and there's thousands of them. And we were the best. I mean, remember Glyn Hughes used to say we were the one that did the most.
Oh, yeah, and Des.
Yeah. But
it was always a motivator, so I'm not sure whether he said that to every single one of the panels.
No, but it was interesting with ground rules. You know, I mean, it was simple. Like, if we write all this down, you take it back to your company, you do it. Otherwise, you're wasting our time. If you don't put input, get lost, go away. You're a waste of time if you're going to sit there and just take the jollies around the world. And that was very strong, and that's why we got things done.
Yeah. No, you're right. It was a good old times, and that was. I remember, Dave, when Des came up and said, like, I think there's an opportunity to do something. We had that chat, and then I think probably the next month he kicked it off.
Oh, for sure. I mean, one of the classic ones was when he came to us, of course, and said that IATA didn't want to have two processes. So we said, well, let's just give them one then.
Yeah.
And we sat down and we wrote the single process where any freight forwarder anywhere in the world would only deliver paperless. And if a paper document was required by government, it would be printed at the cargo terminal and put on board the aircraft to satisfy the legal requirement. Now here we are, sort of 10, 11 years after, Lufthansa have just launched a single process.
Yes, I thought that was going to come up because I've mentioned that. So every time somebody says about paperless, and it is ridiculous that in this day and age it can't be done or it hasn't been done.
Yeah.
But I knew that would please you when Lufty made that announcement.
That's fantastic.
Summer
Fantastic.
schedule. Yeah.
And fantastic. And now I want to just sit back and listen to any excuses from any other airline who says they can't do the same.
Yeah. I was going to ask you both in your career time what made you mad, but I don't need to ask you now, David. But Rupert.
No, I can remember doing a presentation. I think it was at one of the SGHA conferences where I did a presentation on how the telephone had changed in 40 years at the time, and the computer had changed in 40 years, and the airway bill was exactly the same, and we were still using it as a paper document in 40 years. I mean, it's staggering that we have to be taken dragging and screaming to make change in the industry that so badly needs it.
True.
And that's it for me. And under that, there's many subheadings. Have you got a week on this call? I can now list them. Right.
Go on, Sam. I want to see you on the home run.
Well, I mean, it's the conservative with a small c part of the industry that is frustrating, which David has just said. So, and they don't make change unless the regulator tells them to, or the customer tells them to, right? Yes. You've seen people, I mean, still we lie down and die. You've seen the integrators in the 1970s cut into our business, and we just stood back and went, oh dear, let's still fill out the airway bill. And now we're seeing Amazon Prime coming in, and it'll be doing its own thing very, very soon. And it's actually riding on the back of us. Yeah, it's actually making its business model basic and simple, and going into cargo terminals and having standard airline ground handling agents run them until they're ready, and then they'll rip us apart. Yeah. And we still sit there and go, here we go. And then
I work for FedEx. I worked for FedEx for many years.
Sorry, dog's gone mad. I'll stop the dog.
Luckily my 7 are out being walked, so that's okay. I worked for FedEx for several years, and one of the great differences between what FedEx does and what the cargo industry does is that 98 to 99% of the cargo that arrives on a FedEx aeroplane is gone out of the terminal within 4 hours.
Yeah.
And the 1% that is held for customs inspection and further examination is gone the same night. Now, if you look at what we do, an aircraft arrives and nothing is pre-cleared. Everything sits around in the cargo terminal, and it might sit there kind of 1 to 3 days, depending which day of the week it is. Now, how can we possibly make air cargo attractive as a speed entity when it sits around for 3 days? And that's been a huge frustration for me, having seen how good FedEx is, and DHL and UPS and TNT. And why is it? Well, I think there's a variety of reasons. People in our industry don't like to work at the weekends. They want to pack up on a Friday and come back on a Monday, which is why we get the Friday night queues on export and the Monday afternoon queues on import. And then those people piss and moan about queuing when they've had Saturday and Sunday and they just don't want to be there. I mean, it's crazy what we do.
It is strange what you're saying. How we've waited for things or situations to force us into change. So I remember one of the things way back was the console, and I thought to myself, why would anybody do that? Because you're diluting your main revenue streams. And then it was the small packages. We used to get so many of them, and everybody, it was the minimums, and then you think to yourself, why are you ripping the arse out of so many customers for something so small? And you're doing all that extra work for something else. And then, of course, like you said, the integrators come in, and now you've got so many disruptors, but I think now is the time that the industry needs to do something very, very urgently. Otherwise, this level of disruptors is going to fragment the business beyond all imagination, and all those legacy players.
I agree with you.
I've said for ages that COVID is the break that permits us to actually look at what we do and do it differently. It's sad to see that I've spoken to some of the current leaders of industry, and I've said that this is your only chance in a lifetime to do something different, because it's been broken down. You haven't down to nothing, virtually doing nothing at the beginning. And I just see it all coming back the way it always was. No one's doing anything about it. And I think I see a very fractured industry that doesn't work together. That's why COAG was a success, because we got a few of the players working together. Everyone's got their own self-interest in their own little silos. Why do we share data, the same data, to 4 different people just to get an airway bill go? So from the freight forwarder to the ground handler to the customs officer to the security people, all on different platforms, all slightly different, but all the same information. Total waste of time, total waste of money. Then there's a desire for innovation because it sounds sexy. Has anyone actually sense checked that it adds value? Some of it, I think, doesn't. And then we go, I know what, but I want all of that. A gold service for a bronze price. Come on, why can't I have it? Get real, just get real.
Rupert, I agree with you, and I think the one thing that's happening now is people who didn't understand what the word inflation meant, or would have difficulty spelling it. Now everybody understands what it's going to do and what it's going to do over the next couple of years. Now with that comes increases in prices, and people are going to have to start paying. And I think what we've got to start doing now is we've got to focus on value products and not volume products, because that's what's killing it. Now, to do that, people do have to start thinking differently. And if they don't start thinking as a component or a part of the bigger supply chain and bring that supply chain together and closer so that we're able to compete with the new boys on the block, it's going to be some sad days ahead, huh?
I think just do it right for our own industry. I mean, at the end of the day, everything's fragmented, and you just cannot do it for the bronze price. And I think the thing is, everyone's like looking at innovation now because the technology allows it. So we'll have it because we can. But I think I still see the basic fundamental of handling cargo correctly, consistently, every day of the week is still missing. I don't think you can build on anything until that building block is there.
Yeah.
I need a ground handler to put my freight on the flight as booked every day, not 3 days a week, every day of the week, month in, month out. Then I'll give you some sexy stuff. Until then, what's the point?
Yeah, no, true enough. And another thing now that's pressuring people and especially people that we know so well is the level of personnel and the shortage of them, and the fact that in many cases they only want to do one job, and that's not having a pop at the labour force now. But if it was me and I was desperate and I needed to support the family and whatever I wanted as something special, I'd be trying to enhance my own skill set. And if I enhanced my skill set and I was more agile and I could do more jobs, I'd say, yeah, I'll do more jobs. And the more I do, then that's why I would appreciate a better remuneration package, but not just because things are bad. And I think that level of engagement and that understanding, and the one thing that always drives me mad, and I've got a brother in the industry, in fact, it's his house I'm sitting in now because of these damn storms. He'd say to me, why don't sheds and carriers get it sorted out at the front end? So what happened with the old door controller, where if you had walk-ins and you had small packages, they took you to the front and they organized, and then they did everything, and they kept the doors going open and down, and they'd say, hello, Rupert, how are you this week? Now it's like, it's that service level and making people, well, no matter where we are, what we're doing, if somebody smiles and has a little bit of banter with you and there's a little bit of knowledge of each other, there's more likelihood that you accept more things and that you help in more ways.
Yeah, but I think one of the things, Chris, is that we haven't embraced the digital era until very recently in the cargo industry. We don't, like Rupert said, we don't share information. So, an agent will turn up at a cargo terminal, he will hand over his cargo, and that's the first you know about it. So you don't know what's in his truck. You don't know when he's coming, and it just arrives. And we have these huge bottlenecks called Friday nights for export, where they bring cargo in for Saturday, Sunday, and Monday because they don't want to work at the weekend. Now, I don't believe that any cargo terminal should accept any cargo more than 24 hours before a flight.
And in this day and age, Dave, why should the industry?
Exactly. Why should we? We're not. I mean, we've got to stop calling cargo terminals warehouses because we're not.
And what you do is you
transit sheds.
Yeah, you apply such a prohibitive charge to pre-storage, not to make more money.
Chris, the charges get passed on to the shipper or the consignees, not the agent.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is not to make more money, but to disincentivize people using such valuable space for the wrong reasons.
But then, Chris, then there's the other term that comes in, because I hardly ever see that export holding fee ever charged.
Yeah, because of commercial pressures and relationships.
Right.
And the magic word of fear. Yeah. We've had this word before. I'm frightened to charge them in case they walk away. I'm frightened to charge it because if they walk away, my competitor won't do it. I'm frightened.
Yeah. It's a little bit, it's a little bit like the Titanic, isn't it? You know, keep playing, and maybe if somebody likes the tune, it might start to balance out again. It won't go down. But if that attitude doesn't change, there's going to be so many casualties now in the next couple of years because the alternatives are going to be there. And I can hear in the background Stan Wraith shouting, saying, "I told you it's coming." Do you know what I mean? Like the Grim Reaper. And Stan's got some real valid points about the way things are going, you know. And if we all don't change and change quickly, there's going to be some problems. And this, Rupert, what you said there, Rupert, this is the ideal time to look back and say, we could have, should have, would have. Now let's do it, because we will. Not because we can, but we will. And those changes, and right, here's one for you. As like both of you have been involved in the handling agent side of things, right? Why do you both feel that you weren't, or the businesses at the time weren't able to make the changes that were necessary? Where do you feel was the biggest barriers to the common sense logic? Because if we were to go to a first year degree student base and we were to say, right, this is the problem with logistics in the aviation handling business now, what do you think should be done? What would they do? Most of it would come up.
I'd give you a couple, right? I mean, going back to that conversation that Dave had about the single process on COAG, I remember that we were on that meeting and we were being totally lambasted by the airline saying, you're not doing it. You're not doing the single process. So it was David who said, right then, who have we got here? We've got the four of the biggest ground handlers in the world, right? Rupert, can you do it? Yes, we can do it, because we could. We were ready. I think Avia Partner was there. No, it wasn't Avia. But anyway, a couple of other WFS were there. And we said we could do it. So Dave said, right, we'll go back and we'll turn it on tomorrow.
Yeah.
And one of these airlines around the table, a major international airline, the man who'd been telling us we were useless went white. He went absolutely white. And he said, no, you can't do that. My customers might not like it. Oh, you just said you wanted it. You just told us we can't do it. We can, and we'll turn it on for you on Monday. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. I mean, blind panic. So the customers don't want it. Yeah, they don't like. No one likes change in our industry. We're so conservative with a small c. And that was just a prime example. I mean, the cargo terminals have never been invested in by the airport authorities. Look at Heathrow Airport. Look what FedEx had to do at the back of theirs, including a couple of others, and they're not fit for purpose. They can't handle what we need to do nowadays. No one invests. No one gives a damn about cargo.
Yeah, unless the actual process and management of it changes.
Or they build their own. Why should Donata and BFS and all these people build their own cargo terminals to make it work on an airport authority's real estate?
Totally agree with you, and that's why, in my opinion, the biggest player in the next decade has got to be airports, and they've got to take responsibility for marketing that particular business ecosystem with all of the tenants there, and have certain conditions, certain future-proof buildings if they're going to be built again, the way things are done, standards that have to be applied, because one thing's for sure, a carrier will fly in and fly off and fly away. But the businesses that are around an airport, they're there, majority of them, they're there to stay.
Yeah, but we've got to be able to facilitate the quicker release of cargo after it arrives, which is something that we haven't done successfully in my lifetime, unless you're an integrator. So now let's think about this for a moment. E-commerce, which is probably the fastest growing sector in our business right now. If an e-commerce shipment comes in the mail, it probably gets delivered the same day. It will leave the postal facility the same day. If an e-commerce shipment comes on FedEx, it's cleared the same day. If an e-commerce shipment comes on an airline into a cargo terminal as part of a console, it might be there 3 days waiting for clearance and pickup. Now, why is that? Why haven't we lobbied, as the integrators have, to get pre-clearance on all cargo up to an X amount of value, whatever that is, depending on the country that you're in, so that cargo terminals can be built smaller? Because cargo terminals are only the size they are because you've got to build in 3 days of storage into your plan. And if you don't, you've seen the mess recently at Heathrow and at Amsterdam and at Frankfurt. What happens is it becomes an absolute bottleneck. So you're forcing all this cargo. You're forcing 3 days of cargo into a cargo terminal that's got 1 day of capacity. So what happens? Cargo gets lost, cargo gets damaged, and it just gets worse and worse and worse because we don't seem to have the capability to do what the integrators do, which is get stuff in and out in 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah. Which brings me to another point, which is the customer service element, which is why so many forwarders now are deciding to do things by themselves. So they got total control, which again is that's pulling that brick away in that wall and weakening the wall that we've always relied on. And as they start to do that and they become masters of their own destiny, you know, it's another weakness that's going to happen for our industry.
Sure. I mean, I think that it's long overdue that airlines and forwarders have really meaningful closed loop partnerships. You know, it's okay for forwarders to go get their own aircraft and start their own airlines, but God forbid an airline tries to come up with an arrangement with a shipper. They're threatened with boycotts. They're threatened, well, we won't give you any more cargo if you do that. And so we come back, Rupert, to what we said about the fear in the industry. Mm. The airlines are fearful of agents, ground handlers are fearful of airlines, and so we don't really make the progress that I think we should be making.
We need a huge mentality change, and Chris not just alluded to it, stated it. The industry needs a mindset change, right? We are part of logistics.
Yep.
We act as a bunch of little silos that all maximize their revenues as much as possible, to the exception of everyone else in the chain. Yeah. Don't share data. Don't do this. Won't give you that. Won't tell you when I'm coming. Yeah. Expect you to give me gold service for bronze price and moan like buggery when you don't. I mean, it's rotten. It's rotten.
Yeah. I mean, an example of that, Rupert, I can remember vividly in Bangkok. When I got there in 2007, there was not one single airline, and we had 25 airlines at the time, not one single airline was sending us import FWB or FHL. So when every aircraft arrived and we sent our runner out to get the docs and they came back in, we had to sit down and do the data entry. And they already had it at the airline, they just wouldn't send it to us. So I wrote to all the airlines and I said, look, you need to send me that data. No, they said, no, it's not a requirement of Thai customs, so we will not send it to you.
Yeah. And then it did become a requirement, and all of a sudden they all do it.
I went to customs and I made it a requirement.
Yeah, no, but I mean, for other reasons now, the industry has to send it for security and stuff, right? It's we're being bullied.
I tell you what, Rupert, I bet there are still places in the world now where cargo terminals are not getting import FWB and FHLs.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right.
And that's so sad.
But really, that's another reason. That's another reason, isn't it? To get airports driving the main changes in the future in coordination and collaboration with the authorities at that particular airport or in that country. And then they can really start to drive. They can make sure that anybody who builds a terminal builds it future-proof, whether it's solar paneling or to be seen to be green or whatever, or certain logistics. They can insist on certain slot times, certain parameters of when you can come into the facility, the airport perimeter and go, etc. They can do so many things. Also, they can have shared common facilities. So they could have shared perishable center, a shared equipment pooling, whether it's hard stand or everywhere, even shared pooling of specialists like a SWAT team that represent the airport, but anybody needing that specialization, they pay for it by the hour or whatever. So they could they could start to do things that could cut those costs and make everybody be able to do more with less. And work
the thing is, it's a fractured industry again, because some of the things you've said are happening at some airports. If you look at Amsterdam, they know who's coming, and there's pre-alerts, and it's done at an airport operator level. Brussels tries to do things, but it's so bloody fragmented again.
Yes.
No, I agree. But like how or what is going to be the catalyst to make people stop talking and making excuses for what's going wrong and what's affecting the changes, and start working together on those particular changes?
We could get our industry standards body to actually say when we've written something that it's got to be done, rather than you can do it if you want to, or if you don't want to, well, no, all right then.
Yeah, so take away the should and put the shall in there everywhere.
Yeah, you will. As an industry, we set this standard for standards and safety reasons. Therefore, do it. Not here's an option, have a go, which is what happens at the moment.
Yeah. No, that's true enough. But what I mean, you know what I mean? There's going to be so many people that are going to be out of a job, or they won't be out of a job. They'll just leave. They'll just leave what we know, and they'll go to something that they're more interested in and feel is, is better to look after them for the next.
Look at all the people we've made redundant in the last 2 years, and we're now trying to get people back. I've said many a time, go and get the guy that used to do the job back. He said, well, he's got another job now, and guess where he is? He's in a secure job in an Amazon fulfillment center. I rest my case. Yeah, he's not coming back. He knows where he's safe. Yeah, why would he?
Yeah, and now with the cost of training, or not doing training in a different manner or a different way, that's also a disincentive.
That's another subject in its own, Chris. I got a lot of my training. I got formal training, not on the job stuff. Like here's a mate who's been here 30 years. Learn off of him. You'll get all his bad habits, but don't worry about it. I was trained by British Airways in their training centre at Heathrow, Airwheel Costings 1 and 2, IATA ULD build-up courses in Geneva. I had formal training. Virtually none of that exists anymore. So where do people get trained?
Yeah, no, you're right. And you're worried, don't you? Because also the psychological impact of that, where you've got people, and I've been speaking to so many people just recently, and they're saying that they don't know whether they're coming, going, what their career path is, whether it's the right company. They all seem to be there now, not for the medium or long term, but just until something else pops up. And that's not good for us as an industry either, because the one thing that we always prided ourselves on was not the silent, but the quieter heroes, the ones who come in every day, do a good job. They're proud of what they do, but they don't get involved in the politics and the shouting and the ranting. They just carry on. We can't afford to lose those people.
I mean, I don't know how you get. I mean, I've seen for years now so many jobs of a manager, middle management to an up level in air cargo, saying you must have a degree. I'm sorry,
Yeah, excuse me.
I'm not being rude about our industry. There's some very clever and good people in it, but I don't see us as the sort of the degree mandatory requirements. If I was joining the industry now, I wouldn't get a job because I don't have a degree. Yeah, I couldn't pass all these psychometric tests, getting square pegs in round holes. Yeah, and pass the Myers-Briggs. I'd be classed as a psycho. I mean, I wouldn't get a job now.
Yeah. Let's have a degree in fine arts to go be a supervisor in the warehouse. Yeah. I mean,
no, but like the old German. I've worked for Lufthansa 29 years, but the one thing that I always admired, you know, when people used to come over from Germany, they all had like an apprenticeship or they went through some formal training. And I think that's possibly now, a way that we could get people in for a career if there was a clear path, and if they met all of the milestones that were expected of them, and they put a lot of effort in, that they would get a certain guarantee outcome after X amount of years, but that they could have that where they could take it and transfer it, which is another issue, because you've got all these training courses and training organizations that I think an awful lot of them are very, very good, but there's equally a lot of them that are just putting people through basic memory tests so that they pass and they get a certificate at the end of 1 day, 2 days, or a week. But it doesn't mean that they're practically capable or they've got the competence to carry through certain tasks and tasks under pressure.
I think some of the things I think IATA are trying to do a management sort of degree or development thing, aren't they? It's got a name. But the other thing for me is some of this online training. And I know we're forced to do it in COVID days, but I know what, let's do your exam. And then if you fail, go and do it again and keep going until you pass.
Yeah. Sorry,
that's not a test of knowledge.
Yeah, no, I agree, Dave. I think, and I think, and all right, maybe people are watching this, they said, look at those 3 old dinosaurs. But yeah. I think at the end of the day, if you know that it's a little bit like a car, isn't it? If you don't have an MOT on your car, or it doesn't pass regular maintenance, you're not going to get it insured. It can't be on the road. And if you take the risk of running it, you're likely to get caught. Well, I think it's the same with your own personal competence. It's something that should be checked and verified. Well, sorry, checked and validated, but then equally somebody should verify it by, practical, I don't know, compliance or whatever, so that you're proud of that universal competence level, and it's got some value if you need to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Whereas you got so many people say, "Oh, I've got 25 years of experience." And you question it. You say maybe they've got 1 year's experience that they're lucky enough to survive 25 years with. and but having something that shows that you can do certain things, whether it's trim an aircraft, build a pallet, break a pallet down, or whatever. And that's why I'm saying the silent majority would get so much more credit and credibility. And then it might be something that people would say, do you know something? I live near an airport. I love aircraft. I love the excitement of it. And when you think about it, at the end of the day, all 3 of us, we've all had a lovely international life as a result of this career, huh?
Yeah, I think if we could get cargo terminals globally to be able to operate more like the integrators do, I think the industry itself then becomes far more exciting and far more enticing for youngsters to come into, because right now, and I think for a long time, it's not a sexy industry. It's not something you think about when you're in school. I mean, I stumbled into it as a 16-year-old. I just stumbled into it. I mean, I had no clue what air freight was when I walked in the office when I was 16, but I learned pretty quickly. But how do we attract the 16-year-olds, and then how do we attract the sixth formers who don't want to go to university, and then how do we attract the kids then that have done the 3 years in university? How do we get them to come into this industry when it's just not attractive?
Yeah, and I think there are examples like us to show people how attractive it can be because of the internationalization. And we were talking about Martin Drew earlier. I mean, there's an example of what can be done if you apply yourself and if you really, really are determined.
But let's go back. I mean, I'm going to pick on Lufthansa because Lufthansa has a good reputation, right?
Yeah.
Why has it got a good reputation? Because it spends time training its staff. I would hazard a guess developing its staff, and it can therefore deliver a consistency of service that people want to go back for. I remember being at Birmingham Airport many years ago when we had Lufthansa and they were doing their I can't remember what penalty and reward program. And
Oh,
I was the
bonus
man.
malus. Bonus
Yeah.
malus.
I was
Malus.
it was
With no
network
bonus.
standards, it was called. Yeah, I was frightened to death of it as the cargo manager. But what happened is we all embraced it, we all got better, and all our other customers benefited from it as well, because that's the standard we deliver to everyone. And that's why people use Lufthansa. So, you know, that's my personal view on,
Yeah,
on
no,
booking
Rupert,
on Lufthansa.
I can
And then
remember.
they developed people, and Martin Drew, Robert Fordry, all these people came out of that stable.
Yeah, I can remember them as two young lads. But I also remember them, and if they get the chance to listen to this, I hope they'll have a smile on their face when I say, when I first went there, I was playing football, I was doing lots of things, and then somebody said to me, "You got to go to Zeeheim for 4 weeks." I said, "What? A month?" They said, "Yeah, you got to go and do your A1, your training." I said, "You're having a laugh." And they said, No. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to miss 3 or 4 games of football, got, you know, crack with the lads going out and everything. When I got there, after I experienced it for the first couple of days, I would have paid out of my own money to go there.
Right.
Not just because of the learning, but the social side, meeting people from all over the world, the facilities that were there. It was an incredible place. And the way they taught you, and the one thing that I always remember is this teacher come up to me and a couple of other lads after the first 3 days, and he said to us, he said, "I know you're young and you're enjoying yourselves." He said, "But you're not getting the results," because we had tests on regular basis, and especially in the first 2 weeks. And he said, "If you fail your test on Friday," he said, "you will be going home on Saturday morning, and there will be a letter sent to your manager, and chances are you will lose your job." Now, it wasn't about the job at the time, I've got to be honest. It was about missing another 3 weeks in Zeeheim. And we knuckled down and we made sure we passed our test. But once you got that yellow certificate, it meant something. And wherever you went in your career, or if you went for an interview or whatever, you brought that out and they looked at the courses you had, and they knew the curricula, they knew the type of testing. It actually meant something special.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, it's attract and retain, isn't it? Certain people will sort of climb the greasy pole and probably get the travel. I mean, I remember sitting there as an export clerk watching my boss going left, right, and centre, and I just thought he was on jollies on a very big expense account. And I was very grumpy until I got the jollies with the very big expense account, and that's the way it is. And
when you got the jollies, who had to go to all the horrible places in the world and open up?
Oh God, yeah. Yes, it was you, David.
Yes, thank you. Chris, any dodgy place, Dave, you're going here. Oh, all right then, Rube, I'll go.
Right, there was a certain place which were for a Western Christian was quite dodgy, and yes. I remember you coming back telling me that the taxi driver told you to lower your head as we drove past some terrorist training school. No, so that's why I wouldn't go, Dave, funnily enough.
That was one of the Air Force colonels who was driving me to a place up in the northern part of that country that's not the safest place in the world.
Well, I remember, Rupert, you had me in stitches when we were there, and they needed somebody to go to Baghdad.
Oh, yeah. Rupert wouldn't go there, mate.
No, but it's the way Rupert explained, because I thought myself, oh yeah, and it was the first non-rapid descent. It was on Maximus, and I thought, well, a bit of that. I've always wanted to go in there, and I said, yeah, I'll go. And then when we walked back, Rupert, the way you explained to me, I thought, what a bloody idiot! What have I done? Stupid. You know? But they were great old days. Listen, lads, we're coming to the end of the session, okay. And like always, it's gone a lot quicker than I would have thought. So, just to finish with, if we were to do another one, what topic would you like to talk about?
Well, I mean, one for me I'd like to talk about is, why does IATA still own the SGHA?
Okay.
Well, who should then?
Well, I mean, I think with probably 85% of handling done by the ground handlers, it maybe should sit with ASA.
True.
It's not an airline to airline document as it was 45 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a very different animal now. And, you know, maybe again, it's time to look at it differently.
I think it's time to ask the question. And I know lots of people do surveys and stuff, but What does the customer want in our industry? Not what we think. So many times we decide what they want and we offer products to someone and they lap it up.
But we've got to get to shippers and consignees and not ask the forwarders.
No, exactly. So, but my point is that it's a big, broad question. What does the customer want?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, we still do post flights on a flight number and a date. Go on a FedEx website, it doesn't give you any of that crap. But the customer's happy and they know where their freight is. So what does the customer want? Are we giving them what they want? Are we doing it in the right way? That's just a big, broad question.
Yeah.
And who's that keeping time on how long we've done?
I'm not. It's me reminding myself to do something after this call.
Oh, good. And just to finish, one of the things you were mentioning there about coming in as youngsters and getting a great career, I also think that there are certain people who are in the industry who could help people coming into the industry without any animosity or bitterness or this is the way we did it, etc. Because that's gone. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a little bit like a footballer or a rugby player. You played, it was a different time, there was different pressures, different dynamics, but you can always pass on help or advice or success, which I think is of value to youngsters, as long as you're not telling them this is the best way to do it, the way we did it, etc. And then if youngsters accept a little bit of advice, you know, then maybe it'll fast track them into the positions that they want to be in as well. So I think there's a good balance between both. Right. I was told by a few people when I said you two were coming on, not as you said earlier, Rupert, that it would be me interviewing Stadler and Waldorf, and for those who know who they are. But no, they said to me it was going to be like a Clint Eastwood film, and I was trying to think of which film they were talking about, and unfortunately it was The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. So we'll have to decide who's who at some date in the future with a beer. And I would say one thing, it's always a pleasure to speak to both of you. It's always a pleasure to meet up, and please God, we'll do so somewhere this year. And then we can recap on things that have been done and things that we need to do. And I'd love to have you both back on again, as I'm sure Salem will as well. So thanks very much, lads. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Welcome. Pleasure. Cheers. Good to see you, Dave. Good to see you, Chris.
Take it easy, buddy.
All the best. Cheers.
Cheers, lads.